Welcome to a new class of Angular JS. Well, in my previous classes, I've shown you everything or almost a lot of directives and a lot of commands of Angular JS. And also, this class is going to be a bit related to my previous classes where I've talked about ng repeat and also showed you a bit of its example. But in this class, I'm going to be showing you the brief about ng repeat individually and also how you'll be able to apply it even though if you are a beginner and if you have no prior experience. And also if you are facing any issues, this is going to be the exact class that you need on how you'll be able to use ng repeat. But not just ng repeat, we are also going to be using a couple of scopes in this class and a couple of controllers, which is going to amplify and also going to make this, let's say, directive to be a lot more easier than the other classes which you will find online. So make sure not to skip any part and let's get more into the brief of ng repeat. ng repeat is an Angular JS directive that allows you to dynamically generate a set of HTML elements based on an array or collection in your application. Here's a breakdown of how it works. Example, UL, or let's say an unordered list with the li or the list tag, and then inside of this list tag, you are going to be putting in the ng repeat, and then you have to define the, let's say, iteration or whatever keyword you prefer. And inside the expression of that listed order, or let's say an ordered list or, ordered list, you just have to define the expression of what you've defined in the ng repeat. And then you are going to close off the ordered list tag. So let's just get more into the breakdown. So directive, ng repeat tells AngularJS to repeat the HTML element for each item in the specified collection. And inside the collection in this example, items is an array defined in your AngularJS controller. It could look something like this. And we are also going to be using scopes. Iteration. For each item in the items array, a new listed order or a new list tag element is created. Data binding. The item name, or let's say the expression, is Angular's way of binding data. It receives or retrieves the name property of each item and displays it within the listed order or the list tag. So now let's get into the usage. It is ideal for lists, tables, or any repeated structure over and over again. But in this class, I'm going to be showing you the most easiest method. But if you want to create your own function and if you want to make it more complex, so you don't have to worry, you will also be able to combine it with ng init, ng bind, or maybe ng show, ng hide, and so on. Well, this makes ng repeat powerful for creating dynamic UIs based on data models in AngularJS. It automatically updates when the underlying data changes due to Angular's two-way data binding being available and being possible. And you can also make sure to put in a couple of functions in such a way so that you will be also able to use, let's say, one-way or let's say one-time scopes. So now we know everything about ng repeat. So let's get into our class by opening up any IDE and let's just start on coding. So as you can see from my screen that I have opened up Atom. Now what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to name it ngrep.html. Okay. So this is going to be the file that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to type in HTML, and there we go. And inside, I'm going to customize it just a bit more so that it is a bit more easier for me to show it to you guys. Now, the first thing that we have to do is I'm going to be defining our ng app directly inside of my HTML tag. So inside of the HTML tag, I'm going to name it ng app. Okay, so ng app is going to be equal to a specific, let's say, key variable, or let's say a specific keyword. So I'm going to put in key w. Okay, so that is going to be my specific keyword, and we're going to start off the head tag. So inside the head tag, I'm going to create the title tag so that I can create a title inside of it. And inside that, I'm also going to be putting in ng repeat. So I'm going to put in ng repeats. There we go, ng repeats, and I'm going to put in ex. Okay, so that is going to be the exact example. And I'm going to close off the title. Okay, so that is going to be the title that I'm going to be using. There we go. So we have the title over here. So right after the title, what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be creating the snippet. Now, if you want to use the snippet, you just have to type in that script. Script is going to be the src is going to be equal. And then I'm going to go off to my browser. Now, I'm going to go off to my browser and I'm going to create a new tab. And I'm going to go off to, or let's say I'm going to go off over here, AngularJS. I'm going to copy the CDN, Control C, and I'm going to create the snippet over here, double quotation, and paste it off. Now, after I pasted this off, I'm also going to be closing off the tag over here, and I'm also going to close off that slash, and I'm going to put in script. Okay, and you can also close it off with another script over here, or let's say the JavaScript text if you want to, but if you don't want to, that's also totally fine. And there we go. Okay, so there we go, we have that specific script applied. Okay, so as I have the script applied, now I'm just going to go off, close off the head tag. Okay, so I'm going to close off the head tag slash head. So my head tag, or let's say the head part, is completed. Now I'm going to start putting in my controller. But if I want to put in the controller, as I have already put the ng app inside my HTML, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in this ng controller. Okay, so we have the ng controller, and my ng controller is going to be equal to, let's say, my CTRL. So this is going to be the exact name that I'm going to be using. And now I'm going to put in the tags. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the h1 tag, or let's say the h2 tag. So I'm just going to put this h2 tag. So here I'm going to put my list. So I'm going to put in ice cream list. Ice cream list. Okay, so that is going to be the exact list that I'm going to put in. So I'm going to close off my h2 tag over here. There we go. Now I'm going to start off my ordered list. So I'm going to start off with UL, not an ordered list, but I can obviously put in an unordered list over here. Now, when you want to put in the ng repeat, so you have to start off with the listed tag. So after the li, I'm going to put in ng repeat. Okay, so ng repeat is going to be equal to whatever text or whatever fruit or whatever ice cream there is. So I'm going to put in ice cream, ice cream, and ice cream. You can also put that if you want to. So I'm just going to put in ice cream and ice creams. Okay, so there we go. We have ice cream and ice creams. I'm going to close off the tag and I'm going to put in the expression. And inside the expression, I'm going to say ice cream. Okay, and I'm also going to put this over here. So there we go. We have that over here. Now, as I have that, I'm going to close off the tag, or let's say the list tag over here. So I'm going to close this off, /li. Okay, so /li, and I'm going to close it off, /ul. So as I have the /ul, now I'm going to create another script for our module. So I'm going to type in script. There we go. So in this script, I'm going to put in the Angular dot module. Okay, so this is the Angular module that we have. And now inside of this, I'm going to put in, let's say, my, or let's say I'm just gonna put in whatever keyword we are using. So as I have key W, so I'm gonna put in key W and then comma. And after the comma, I'm just going to put in the second bracket over here. Put a bit of space and then close off the parentheses. Now in the next line, I'm going to start off with the dot controller. There we go. We have the dot controller. And inside, I'm going to put in the name of the controller, which is basically myCTRL. So I'm going to put in myCTRL over here. And after that, you can also try putting in singular quotation. That is also doable. So let's just try off the singular quotation. Okay, so after that singular quotation, I'm going to put in a comma and I'm going to put in the function. Okay, so there we go. We have the function and now we're going to be defining the scope. There we go. We have that scope over here. And obviously we have two of these parentheses. Obviously we're not going to be needing two, but you can also obviously check this one over here if where this is starting from. If it isn't starting from any specific part, then obviously you can try removing it, but I would suggest you try keeping it if you prefer. So I'm going to keep it like this with the specific scope. And after that, I'm going to put in the third bracket. And now inside of the third bracket, I'm going to put in my $scope. There we go. We have that specific scope dot, and then you have to put in whatever value you are using. So as we've used this instance over here, ice cream. So I'm going to put in ice creams. This one over here. So there we go. We have ice creams. Now instead, or let's say after ice creams, I'm going to put in an equal. Now these are going to be equal to specific values. So the secondary bracket, the first one I'm going to start off with chocolate. There we go. Chocolate, comma, single quotation. I'm going to put in vanilla. And after that, I'm going to put in like single quotation again. And the last one that I want to put is going to be red velvet. Okay, that is all I need to put. Close it off with this. And after that, you also want to close off each and every one of these values. So here you're going to start off, or let's say put in two third brackets to close it off. And you're going to just put in, let's say, I'm going to close off this value over here. And obviously you just need to close it off with this. Okay. And you can also start off putting in more scripts, or let's say end up the script of this one. So if you want to end up the script, you just have to go off to the same indentation level, which just looks a bit more better. So I'm just going to put in script. Okay. So that is all you need to put. Over here, you're also going to close off this one. There we go. Okay. So now you want to save up the file, and you can also start off working with different values if you want to, but I'm going to just open up this file right now. Okay. So we have ng-rep. So I'm just going to refresh up the site. You can see we have the ng-rep over here. So I'm going to be clicking on this one. So whenever this opens up, you'll basically see the listed order. Okay. So this is how it will look like. And if you see this one over here, you can just go off to Atom again and just remove one of this over here. Okay. Now you're just going to save up the file, go off to the site, refresh it. There we go. This is how it will look like. You can also like change any of these lists however you want. So in this case, if I want to use maybe like banana, here I'm going to put in cherry. And here I'm going to put in mint. So if I just save up the file, go off to the site, refresh it, you can see each and every one of these values have changed. Now, one thing you can try doing or like change in here are that you can like take these scripts inside of the head tag right after script. But I would suggest you can try using the script in the body too, because it just kind of helps me a bit more, and I just like feel it's more flexible if you put it inside of the body, because it can read out the commands first, and the web page which you are already creating, the HTML tags fill up those parts so that the HTML or the website or the web page is already created on your web. So it is very easy to represent your data when you are using the scripts and also the module and controller and defining your scope inside of the body. Now, even like whenever you try to like, let's say, define it or represent the values inside of your web or inside of the body, you don't even have to do it, because you are directly you are just representing those data as commands. So if I just go off to the side and if I just go off to inspect, it might seem a bit more complicated than my previous classes. But one thing you will check is that whenever you are using these, it will already detect up the parts which are being used, and also using specific classes with ng binding and also the ng scopes. Okay, so whenever you see these, you will already understand that each and every one of these commands are working properly. Now, what if you want to use like specific numerical values? Now, in a couple of cases, what happens is that even if you don't want to or let's say if you want to use numerical values, you can just type in the exact number. Let's say we have 2. Now, we're just going to try it out just in case, because in some modules, it does not work properly. So what you basically have to do is you have to save up the file again, go off of the site and refresh it. Now, whenever you refresh the site, you will basically see that the numerical values are already being represented inside of your web. Okay, so this is basically how simple it is. Now, in some cases, you might also think that you want to multiply. So if you want to try out these values, so if I just put in 4 into 2, and if I save up the file, go off of the site, refresh it, you can still see that the mathematical terms or whatever values you are trying to work with will also be analyzed, and also it can detect up what you want as a result. So if I just go off over here and if I just put in, let's say 24 slash, let's say 12. Okay, so if I just save up the file, go off to my site, refresh it, you can now see that we don't have any values right now, and it is showing me an error. So we do not basically want that, so I'm just going to close it off. But you can try out using plus over here, and you're going to put in this specific value just like this, and you can just start put in the save. And in some modules it does not work, but in also some cases it does. So if you are using the newest module or the CDN of, let's say, AngularJS, it will work properly, just like you can see. And we also have to check which version we are using. So the version we are using right now is 1.8.2, which is basically up to date right now. Okay, so now you know how you'll be able to put up these values. You will also be able to put up multiple values or multiple, let's say, alphabets. You can also add that up in specific cases. Like if I just put in single quotation over here, and if I just put in, let's say, hello, and if I just add it up with another one, let's say here, I'm going to be putting in hello there. Okay, so if I just save up the file, go off to the side, refresh it, now you can see we have hello there. Now, one thing what we have to do over here to create the space is going to be a double quotation or the single quotation over here. Okay, so if I just save up the file, we're going to go off to the side, refresh it, and you can still see we are having this error. So if we have this error over here, just put another plus, save up, go off to the site, refresh it. Now we can still see we have this, it's just concatenated together. So we just have to put in double quotation, and we're just going to put in a bit of space over here. Oh, let's say we're just going to put in the space in between it. Save, refresh, and there we go. We have the list. We also have the space. So hope you understood about everything in this class on how you'll be able to use ngRepeat simply just by using HTML without any JavaScript file or without any specific resource. So if you still have any confusion, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out. And another thing that you have to keep in mind is that make sure to practice along right after watching the videos so that you can progress with work, and also you can make your own functions and also create more strings just by using these basic command lines and also directives. So thank you for watching this video again. And without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of AngularJS. Welcome to another class of AngularJS. Well, in my previous classes, I've shown you everything or almost a lot of ng filters or ng directives. So in this class, we're going to learn something a bit more different. So in this class, we're going to cover everything starting from the brief, then to the practical, and also about the explanation, all you need to know about filters. So if you have no idea what filters are in AngularJS or HTML, you don't have to worry because I'm going to cover and guide you through the whole process. So let's get more into the brief about AngularJS filters. AngularJS filters are a powerful feature that allow developers to format data in the view layer of an AngularJS application or the ng app. They can be used in templates, controllers, and directives to manipulate the presentation of data without changing the underlying data model. The purposes of AngularJS filters are given below. Data formatting. Filters can format data for display, such as converting dates, numbers, or currencies to a user-friendly format. Searching and filtering. They can filter arrays and collections based on specific criteria, allowing users to search for and display relevant data. Transformation. Filters can transform data such as changing case, such as uppercase or lowercase, or applying custom transformation. Localization. They support localization by formatting data according to specific cultural standards. Advantages of AngularJS filters. Reusability. Filters can be reused throughout the application, promoting consistency and reducing code duplication. Simplicity. Using filters in templates keep the code clean and easy to read, separating concerns between the data and its presentation. Built-in filters. AngularJS provides several built-in filters, in example, currency, date, filter, uppercase, etc., that cover common formatting needs. Custom filters. Developers can create custom filters tailored to specified or specific application requirements, enhancing flexibility. Performance. Filters are optimized for performance and can be applied to large datasets without significant impact on the application's speed. Summary. AngularJS filters are a versatile feature that improves data presentation and manipulation in the application. So now you can understand that when you use filters, you'll be able to create your application or your web application a bit more interactive. By allowing for reusable, customizable, and efficient data formatting, they play a crucial role in building dynamic, user-friendly interfaces, their ability to streamline both development and maintenance make them a valuable asset in any AngularJS project. So now that you know about the brief about AngularJS filters, so now we can get more into the practical part. Now, another thing that I would suggest, or which I've been suggesting in most classes, is make sure not to skip any class or any part of these classes, because one is going to amplify the other classes. Okay, so it will be easier for you to progress better and understand more and more into the project or into the course if you understand every part of these classes. Because later on, we are also going to be like, intertwining each and every one of these command lines, and we might also be using multiple directives, multiple commands, and multiple snippets to create our application. So without any further ado, let's open up any IDE which we have on our device. So as you can see from my screen, I have opened up Atom. Now, as we have already opened up Atom, now we're going to be starting from scratch again, because in this class, we are going to be, using the filters of AngularJS. Well, in my previous class, I've shown you about how you'll be able to use ng-repeat. So in ng-repeat, what we did most of the time, even if we go off over here, we took like specific like variables, specific data, and we can also see that this is also over here. We can see all of these datas are over here. Okay, so we're going to be using something related to it, because we are going to be taking specific variables or specific parts, or let's say a specific listed order inside of our, let's say, web, just like this one, but we're going to be using the filter so that we can filter out certain data too, and we also can make the application a bit more interactive. So if we want to make it more interactive, first off, we're going to be starting off with the HTML tags. So first thing that I'm going to do over here, I'm going to go off to Atom, and I'm going to click on this new file. Now, let's say I'm going to type in filter.html. That is going to be the name of the file. Okay, so as that is the name of the file, now let's open up the HTML tag. Okay, so there we go. We have the HTML. Now we're going to be keeping all of these the same. Now we can also see the meta char set UTF-8. Now in here, I'm going to set up a title. So I'm going to put in AngularJS filters. Okay, so that is going to be it, or that is going to be the title of, let's say, our file. Now, the next thing that we want to do is that create a snippet. So I'm going to create script. Script is going to be equal, which you can see over here. Obviously, put in src so that we can get out the source. Go off to the web, AngularJS website, download AngularJS, copy that, and just paste it in the double quotation. So basically, we are done with this part over here. And we also want to put in /script. There we go. And close off the tag. Now, what we can also do is that we can also define the script again with the text JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to put in text type is going to be text/JavaScript. Okay, so that is basically what you need to put over here. And we are obviously going to be closing this off. So I'm just going to take this onto that line over there. So it's going to be easier for me to create more space. There we go. We have the head tag now. Now, as we have the ending head tag, we're going to be keeping this over here. So it will be easier for me to understand. Now, after the head tag, I'm going to create a bit more space on the body. Now, inside the body, you want to define, let's say, your specific controller. Okay, now another thing that you can check over here is that we did not define the application yet. So if you want to define the application, what we can do is we can remove this directory over here. We can keep the language English if you want to. You can also change the language whenever you want to. And we're going to be defining my ng app in my HTML again, just like I did in my previous class. So here ng app is going to be called my APPL. Okay, so that is going to be the name of my application. Okay, so as we have my application over here, we're going to go off to the body. So inside the body, I'm going to put in ng. I'm going to put in controller. Okay, so my ng controller has been defined. So I'm going to put in ng controller equals to the main controller. Okay, that is going to be it, the main specific controller. And now you're going to define whatever you want inside of this body. So I'm going to create a bit more space so that it is easier for me to see. I'm going to put in h2 over here. And in h2, I'm going to say that these are the objects. Okay, or let's say valuables. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to close off the h2 tag slash h2 and close it off. Now you're going to start putting in the input value, which is going to basically help you to, input more data, and you can define that input value. Okay, now another thing that you will check is that sometimes when you are doing or putting the input value or the input tag, there is no ending of that input tag. So let's just do something like over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do over here is that I'm going to just type in that value. Let's say in the h2 over here, I'm going to put in the open tag input. Okay, input type. There we go. We have the specific input type. It's going to be equal to, let's say, double quotation. And obviously, it's going to be specifical text, right? Because we are using specific text. So I'm going to type in type is text. There we go. And then you're going to put in the ng model, which is very important. So I'm going to put in ng model over here. And ng model is equal to, let's say, the search item. So I'm going to put in search item. Okay, I'm just going to name it search item, but you can put whatever you want. Now I'm going to put in placeholder. Placeholder, you can see it already detected it is a function. Now here I'm going to put in, let's say, inside of the parentheses or inside of the quotation, which we see over here, I'm going to put in search objects. Okay, so there we go. We have the search objects. Now I'm going to close off the tag. And inside you want to, or let's say, define the listed order. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the ul tag over here. And obviously after that, I'm going to put in the li. And obviously when you use ng repeat, what you do is put the ng repeat inside of the listed tag. So I'm going to put in ng repeat. Ng repeat is going to be equal, open up the parentheses or open up the quotation. And I'm going to put in object in objects. That is going to be easier for me when I am creating my Angular module. So object in objects. And obviously you're going to put in, let's say, a line or whatever you prefer. So after that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put in, let's say, filter. And then I'm going to put in search item. Okay, there we go. Search the item just like we did over there. Okay, so make sure to keep that thing in mind and make sure that both of them are the same. So I'm just going to keep it small over here. Search item. Okay, that's all you need to do. And what you want to do is that you want to close off this tag or close off this over here. And what you can do is also put this over here if you want to, but if you don't want to, that's also totally fine. So I'm going to close this off over here. So after that, we have created the listed tag and we also applied the ng repeat. So the next thing that I want to do is that I want to put in the expression. So the expression that I want to put is going to be the name of the object. So I'm going to put in object dot name. Okay, so object name minus or dash expression again and I'm going to put in object dot price. And obviously you can put in an L over here if you want to. You can also put in the, the line. So I'm just going to put this L over here, or I'm just going to keep it like this, and I'm going to put in currency. There we go. We have the specific currency which we are working with. So object price, I'm just going to close this off. There we go. Object in objects, filter search item, object dot price, and also we have the currency. And then we are going to close off the list tag /li. Okay. Now, as we have that, we're also going to be closing off the ul tag. Now, we can try saving this up on our file, and we can open up the file over here. As we have filter, you can see over here, and it is also basically the same over here. So we can just obviously go back over there and open it up. But let's just go off to our file and let's just open up the filter. You can see now we have this search objects where we will be able to input our data and search for it. But we can still see there is no list, and it is also showing me this error. So if I want to fix that up, I have to do a couple of things. Okay. So I'm going to be, like showing it to you and guiding through the whole process. Okay. So you don't have to worry about it. So let's go back to Atom again, as we are done with the listed order over here, which you can see already over there. So what I want to do is I'm going to create the script first. Okay. So after UL, I'm going to create a bit more space and I'm going to create the script here. So I'm going to type in script. So this is basically going to be, let's say, the secondary, let's say, snippet and the Angular module. So script is going to be Angular dot module over here. Open up the parentheses and I'm going to define my application. So my application's name is my APPL. Okay. And now after that, I'm going to put in a comma, open up the second bracket, and you are good to go. Now in the next line, I'm going to define my controller. So I'm going to put in dot controller, open up the parentheses, and inside you want to define that specific controller, which is main controller over here. Okay. So here I'm going to type in main controller. Okay. So after main controller, I'm going to put in a comma. And after that, I'm going to put in function, open up the parentheses, and I'm going to put in $scope. Okay. So as we have $scope over here, you can also see that we have another parentheses, which we don't basically need. So after that parentheses, open up the curly braces or the third bracket and define your scope value, or let's say the scope variable. So I'm going to type in scope dot object, which we did use in most of these cases, which we already see object. So I'm going to put in object over here. So let's just put in the value over here after the object. So let's just define it. So I'm going to put in equal. And then as I'm going to define it in a more specific way, so I'm just going to start creating, more of these spaces. So I'm going to start off with the first one. Let's say I'm going to put in name. Okay. You can also put in, let's say, object name if you want to, but I'm just going to put in name just in case. So name is going to be in singular, like quotation. And here I'm going to put in the name of the object. So the first object name that I'm going to be using over here is going to be, let's say, Apple. Okay. Let's say the Apple, comma, price, then put in the colon. And here the price is 1,000. Okay, so that is the exact price that I want. And after that, I'm going to put in a comma. We're going to do the same thing over here a couple of times. So open up the third bracket, name, and the next one is going to be Samsung, comma. Let's say I'm going to put in the specific price range. Now this one's price is going to be $999. There we go. That's all we need, comma. Third bracket again, name, And this one I'm going to put in, let's say, Huawei. I'm going to put in comma. The price is going to be defined as, let's say, 800, comma. And I'm going to just create another list. So the name is going to be, let's say, OnePlus. Okay, comma, price. And then this one is going to cost me 900. Okay, so basically we are done on that part. And obviously we're going to close this off too over here. And we also have to close off certain parts in here. As you can see over there, we're going to just close it off with a bracket, parentheses over here, and you're going to put in this colon. Okay, so that's basically all you need to do. So after you have done that, what you're going to basically do is just close off the script slash script. That's all you basically need to do. Okay, so basically we have the whole thing applied. Now what you want to do is you want to save up this file. Now when you save up this file and if you refresh the site, you can still see that we have still no values yet. But what we want to do is we want to define the function. So as we have already defined the function, we have changed the snippet. So what we basically have to do is that we can try just refreshing, removing this window and starting off fresh. So we want to go off like, just removing this file. Let's just close off this and let's just go off to our, let's say, Atom again. And we are going to save up this file and we're going to open it up from the Explorer. So as we are on Explorer, now we can open it up from here. So if we just open this up again from this file, so let's just open this up filter. It's going to refresh it up. And when you just see this, this is how it will look like. Now, another thing that you want to check most of the time is that when you are defining this, make sure to put in this barrier. It will be easier for you to, just differentiate it. Okay. So there we go. Corrected OnePlus to OnePlus. You can see it's also going to give you out a couple of different changes over here. And you can also obviously, close it off like however you prefer. Okay. So thank you for watching this video up till the very end and hope you understood about everything. Now, the last thing that I'm going to explain is going to be the explanation which we have and what directives we are using over here in these command lines. So first off, we have the ng app, which declares the root of the AngularJS application inside of this whole thing. So as we have this myappl, and also we have this ng app over here, which is defining the root. Then we have the ng controller, which we see over here. It binds the mainstream controller, or let's say we have main controller over here, to the body element. Okay. And then we have the ng module, which is basically a two-way data binding with the input fields of the search item. So if we go off to the site and if we want to search for anything, let's say I want to search for Apple, it's going to search up that data. Now, even if we want to change up any of these variables over here, instead of Apple, I want to put in Redmi. If I just save up the file, go off to the site, refresh it, you can see now it has turned into Redmi. So I'll be able to search for Huawei, just like this. And even if I want to search up for dollars or the values, I'm just going to put in this, but it's not going to be able to search for that specific value because you can see we have to put in 1, comma, but it is still going to define or find out the first value of each and every one of these values. Okay. So if we just go off over there, we want to change anything, we can do that anytime we want. So just in case, maybe if I want to change each and every one of these values into, let's say, name of vegetables. So if I put in potato, if I just change this into, let's say, I'm just going to put in tomato. If I just go off to the site and if I still refresh it, you can still see there is no change. So what we have to do basically here is save up the file, go off to the side, refresh it, and now it will change. Okay, so this is basically how it will be able, or you'll be able to customize. Now, the next thing that we have over here is the ng repeat, which we had our previous class on, which iterates over the product array, or let's say the object array, filtering the list based on the search item, okay, which we have over here. And then we have the specific filter. So this specific filter, which we are using, and this filter search item, which we have over here, this built-in filter checks if the object name contains the search item, making it easy to filter the list dynamically. And then we obviously have the currency, which is another built-in filter that formats the price as the currency. So we can see when we put in currency over here, it just specifically gives out this dollar sign over here. So we don't basically have to put any dollar sign over in these values. So now you know everything about filters and how you'll be able to use them. You'll also be able to change out a lot of things over here. You will be able to create multiple, or let's say your own type of filters and your own type of application to search up the values. Now, if I want to just create another value over here, I just have to basically put in the curly braces, type in name, this one over here, single quotation. And if I just want to put in, let's say, maybe I'm just gonna put in, let's say, Poco, put in comma. If I just put in the price over here, and if I put in, let's say, 500, there we go. So if we just put in that value, if we just save up the file, so we're basically good to go. If we just refresh it, there we go. It's just going to add up into our listed order. So thank you for watching this video again, and hope you understood about everything in this class. If you still have any confusion or any question about any part of these lessons, feel free to ask me. I'm always there to help you out. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of AngularJS. Welcome back to a new class of AngularJS. Well, in my previous classes, I've shown you a couple of directives that we use to view, or let's say represent, our data inside of the app. So in this class, I'm going to be giving out everything that you need to know about the ng include. So the ng include is also a directive of AngularJS. So before getting into our practical parts of, let's say, applying or visualizing your data in the web application, let's learn a bit about what ng include is, its purposes, and also its advantages, and also the cons. So in AngularJS, the ng include directive allows you to include an external HTML file, or let's say a template, into your main view. It dynamically inserts the content of the specified file at the location where ng include is used, enabling code reuse and modularization of your application's structure. Purpose of ng include in AngularJS: to dynamically load and incorporate external HTML files or templates into the main view is the core function of ng include. By enabling developers to divide big templates into smaller, more manageable components, it encourages modularity and code reuse. So let's check out the advantages of ng include. Code reusability. This prevents code duplication by enabling you to reuse templates in other application sections. Modularity. It enhances code organization and maintainability by dissecting intricate views into smaller, more manageable parts. Separation of concerns. It maintains a clean view structure by keeping dynamic views and also static content apart. Lazy loading. If utilized properly, templates are only fetched when required, which could enhance initial load performance, and it also depends on your device at the same time. Flexibility. Depending on the application state or scope variables, Templates can be loaded dynamically too. But we don't want our lessons or classes to be that complex, so I'm going to be showing you the most basic way and the easiest way of how you'll be able to use multiple templates using multiple, let's say, files. Now, let's check out the cons of using ng include. First off is performance overhead. Because loading templates require numerous HTTP requests, frequent or superfluous use may cause performance problems. Complexity. If templates are highly nested, excessive use of ng include may make the view structure harder to comprehend. Asynchronous behavior. The view may take longer to render since templates are loaded asynchronously, particularly when the network is slow. Caching problem. Occasionally, templates might not be cached efficiently, necessitating manual caching techniques or resulting in repetitive queries. So another thing that I have to show you, or another thing that you want to do different in this class, is that you basically have to use a different IDE where you'll be able to use a live port. So for this class, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code because it will allow us to use multiple extensions, which is going to allow us to use the ng include and also reduce the performance overhead and to get the best result the easiest as possible. So without any further ado, let's move into our class by opening up Visual Studio Code. And even if you want to use any other IDE such as Sublime Text, C++, you can also try it on. But if you want to make it more easier and to get the best result and let's say the fastest method, which is going to be very effective, just try using Visual Studio Code. So let's open up Visual Studio Code on our device and make sure not to skip any part, because if you do, you might miss out on something very important. So from my screen, you can see that I have opened up Visual Studio Code. Now, if you still don't know where to get it from, you can just go off on any website or let's say any web browser and just search for download Visual Studio Code. And in a couple of devices, it's going to be there integrated. So the first thing that we need to do over here is that we need a specific folder. And I would suggest to you that make sure to put every, let's say, the files which you are using, or let's say how you want to visualize or create the web page to be in single folder. So what you want to do is just click on File and click on Open Folder. Now, when you click on Open Folder, we can see I have this new folder, which basically doesn't have anything. I'm just going to click on Select Folder. So when I have selected the folder, what I want to do first is that in this class, we're going to be needing 3 separate files. One is going to be Java, and the other 2 is going to be the HTML file. So let's start off with the HTML file, which we are going to be defining inside of, let's say, my website. And another thing that you want to do while you are working on Visual Studio Code to actually view or let's say represent your data just by using, let's say, ng, or we can also say we are going to be using this ng include in this class. So what I'm going to do first is that we're going to create a file over here. Just click on this and you're going to type in, let's say, I'm going to type in head.html. Okay, that is going to be the first file. Now, in this first file, how I want to customize it is going to be a bit different than my previous classes. So in this class, we're not going to be putting any, let's say, other stuff except for the deviation tag, or let's say the div tag. So I'm just going to start off with the div over here. There we go. We have the div tag opened up. So I'm going to start off with the h2 so that I can define my variable, or let's say define my data. So here I'm going to say this is my website. Okay, so that is going to be the first line. And in the second line that I want to do is I'm going to put in the paragraph text, or let's say the paragraph tag. And this is going to be, this is dynamically designed. Okay, so that is what you want to put over here. And obviously you're going to save up the file and then basically you are good to go. Now let's just go off the new folder again, and here I'm going to create another file. Now we're going to be creating a whole structure of the web. So it's going to take a bit of time, and we're also going to be starting from scratch. So first thing that I want to do is I'm going to name up the file. Let's say I'm going to name it index.html. So in the index.html, I'm going to start off with the HTML tag, close it off. And here I want to put in the head tag. Okay, so inside the head, what you want to put is that you want to put in your title. So we can either put the title if you want to. If you don't want to, that's also totally fine. So the name of the title, which I'm going to put, is going to be ng include. Okay, so that is all that we need to put over here. And then what we need to put is going to be the snippet. So when you want to put in the snippet, just type in script. There we go. And our snippet is going to be created. And inside the script, I'm going to put in src is going to be equal to a specific variable. So the next thing that you want to do is open up any browser. So let's just open up this browser over here. You can use Chrome, Mozilla, whichever one you want. Now inside of the search bar, what you want to search for is going to be download Angular.js. Hit on enter. And I'm going to open up the first site, which I've done in my previous classes too. Click on download Angular.js. Now copy this CDN over here. Just press on Ctrl+C. Go off the Visual Studio Code and paste it inside of the source. Now, as we have this inside of the source, now what we want to do over here is that I'm going to create another snippet. But inside that snippet, I'm just going to define what kind of snippet am I going to use as that specific source. So I'm going to hit on enter. Let's say I'm going to type in script, close off the tag. And here I'm going to put in, let's say src is going to be equal to, let's say, app.js. Okay, so that's basically all you need to put over here and close off the script. So we are done on this, the snippet. Now what we have to do is we're going to go off after the head tag. Okay, so after the head tag, we're going to be defining the body. So I'm going to type in body, close off the tag, and there we go. Now, inside of the body, I'm going to put in ng controller. Okay, so in the ng controller, I'm going to type in equal. I'm going to put in main controller. That is going to be the specific name. So after the main controller, I'm going to be putting in more variables. But before that, or let's say inside of the body, I'm going to define my ng include. So I'm going to start off with div tag. And inside the div tag, you are going to be putting in ng include. Okay, so the ng include is going to be equal to a specific variable. So here, the ng include is going to be equal. Obviously, open up the second, two quotation, or let's say double quotation, and obviously put in the single quotation at the same time. So inside of this single quotation, you are going to define the name of this head.html. So I'm going to type in head.html as that specific source, because we are going to be needing that specific variable, or let's say that specific data, to be visualized inside of the web too. So after you are done, now what you want to do is you can try opening this up. So if you want to do that, just save up the file, and you can obviously try opening it up on the web browser. Okay, so we're going to go off to the file where we have this over here. Let's just open up the file. There we go. Now let's just open up the index.html. And if you refresh it, we can still see there is no specific value because the module that we are using is still not defined. So we also have to define it in another specific file, which is going to be the JavaScript file. Okay, so I'm going to just minimize this for now, and let's just go off to the site, or let's say I'm just going to go off to let's say, just the index.html file right now. Now, first thing that we want to do over here, as we already have the body closed, I'm just going to type on this over here. And the next thing that I want to include over here is going to be the app. Okay, so I'm going to put in app.js because we are also defining the same text over here. Okay, so I'm going to create a specific variable, which we are seeing over here. So to create that, I'm going to type in var app is going to be equal to angular dot module. Okay, so we have defined the module, open up the parentheses, and here single quotation, and inside that I'm going to put in ng include app. Okay, so that's all you need to do, and after that you want to create your own function, so secondary brackets and close it off. Okay, so after that you want to define your controller, so I'm going to put in app.controller. There we go, and open up the parentheses, and here you want to define your controller, so I'm going to put in main controller. Okay, so as we have the main controller, we're going to define another controller as the child scope. So here I'm going to put in function. So after the function, open up the parentheses again, parentheses opened, and $scope. Okay, that's all you need to do. And after that, you want to open up the third bracket and open this up again. Okay, and right after that, you want to close it off. That's basically all you need to do. And you want to save up the file. And if you go off to the site and refresh it, you can still see that we still don't have any specific value. But if you want to make sure that these values are, there, so I'm going to save up each and every one of these files, which you can see over here. Save up this file, go off to the browser and refresh it. Or if it doesn't still open up, I would just suggest you to close it off and try to open this up back from here. And if it still doesn't give you up any data, you don't have to worry because I'm going to guide you through the whole process again and again. Now, the next thing that you want to do is that go off of the extensions of Visual Studio Code and just search for this live server. Now, when you search for this live server, as I already have it installed, you'll basically find an install button over here. Install it on your device. It's just going to take a bit of time, and make sure that you have stable internet connection. Now, the next thing, what you have to do is just close this off, go to index.html or whichever file you are using to, let's say, create your HTML file and also include all of the controllers. Just make sure to go live. So whenever you have this live server installed, you will basically find this option at this corner. Click on this go live and it will start off the port. Okay, so I'm just going to close this off for now. And there we go. We have this live port opened. Now, after this div tag, which we have over here, we're going to define a lot more of these values, or let's say another div tag. So I'm going to put in div again, close this off. And inside this div tag, I'm going to put in a paragraph tag. So I'm going to put in p, close this off, and I'm going to put in this is the front page. Okay, that's basically all you need to put. And now the next thing what you want to do is save up this file. Go off to the browser and refresh it. Now you can see that the first data, or let's say the first text which we have put inside of the HTML tag, is only being, let's say, delivered, or let's say just being shown. But what about this one, which we have the div tag and also the include tag over here? So when we basically are working with this, include tag, we have to make sure that the head.html file is working properly. So make sure to customize it just the way I showed to you. Now, if there are a couple of things that are not working properly, then obviously I would just suggest you just refresh the site and make sure that this is working properly. Another thing is that before customizing, or let's say refreshing the whole thing, what you want to do is close off the port again. There we go. The server is now offline. And what you want to do is go off to index.html, go off to the folders. If you see the option of go in live or open with live server, just click on this. It's going to open up the port, and there we go. You can see this is my website. This is dynamically designed, and this is the front page. So if we just go off over here and we can change up the values, let's say instead of front page, this is the web page. Okay, so if we save up the file, go off to the browser, refresh it, and you can see this is the web page. Now, another thing that we can do is we can add H1 tags to these ones too. And we can obviously put in more commands and customize my browser. Okay, there we go. We have both of these. So I'm going to close one of these over here. Let's go off to our IDE. And instead of P, I can also put in the H1 over here. So if I put in H1, I'm just going to cut this, Control X, Control V, save up the file, go off to the site, and there we go. This has increased in sight. Okay. So basically, this is how you'll be able to use ng include in AngularJS, and it's also going to be very simple if you just follow up through a couple of steps. And if you still have any confusion or any question even after these classes, or even after watching this, and if you check out that after even trying out and putting out these commands, it is not working properly, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out and guide you through the whole process. So thank you for watching these videos up till the very end. And basically, you don't have to worry about these command lines because I'm going to be adding each and every one of these files inside of my resource folder so that you'll be able to use them whenever you want to. And you can also check out the commands of what I am using and also what steps I'm using or what problems are you facing to fix out or find out the solution. So thank you again for watching this video. And without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of AngularJS. Welcome to a new class of AngularJS. Well, in my previous classes, I've shown you about a lot of directives. So I'm going to be showing you in this class of how you'll be able to create an interactive form and also how you'll be able to input your data inside of the form. So in this class, we're going to cover everything that you need to know about AngularJS forms and also the usage of ng model. Well, in this class, we're going to have 3 separate sections. And in this class, or let's say this class is going to be, let's say, separated into 2 parts because there's going to be a lot of coding in this class, which we're going to be needing to do. And we're also going to be first off, creating our structure, or let's say we're going to be first off creating the format of our web page, and then we're going to make it interactive. But if you prefer it to be more simple, then I would also show you and guide it to you through the whole process. And after the class is done, I would just suggest you get on your IDE and practice it on your own. So before getting into our practical class, we have to learn a bit about the forms, or let's say AngularJS forms, and also the ng model. AngularJS directives called ng model creates a link between form elements and application data, which is basically the model. By allowing two-way data binding, it guarantees that modifications to the form components automatically update the model, and that modifications to the model automatically updates the display. So when we say that ng model is being used, you are applying two-way data binding. So in that case, even if you create the structure of your web page on any IDE, you can visualize that data on your web. But what happens in one-way binding is that even after displaying that data inside of the web, you cannot customize it via web. You basically have to go back into the IDE and then you have to customize it. But in this case of two-way data binding, what you can do is also apply or customize the visualized data directly from the web through the interactive phases. Now, NG model's objectives. First off, we have to keep in mind whenever we are using NG model, two-way data binding is possible. It brings the application model and user interface into sync. For instance, the model data is automatically updated when a user enters data in an input field and vice versa. So even if you enter a data inside of the web app, you will get the data visualized on the web. Even if you just add your data inside of the IDE via commands or let's say coding, it will also represent the data inside of the web. So it is kind of like both ways, which makes it kind of dynamic. Form control. It gives you access to the status of the form control, such as validity, filthy, pristine, touched, etc. So you may manage form submission or provide the error message. Now let's check out the benefits of the NG model. Real-time updates. In my previous class, I've shown you how you'll be able to use directive using Visual Studio Code and how you'll be able to go live through that, because a couple of the directives of AngularJS do not work without live port. So this model also automatically updates as the user modifies the input, and you don't need any live port for that. Form control state. It makes error handling and validation easier by enabling developers to quickly monitor the status of form inputs, such as ng-dirty or ng-valid. Customizable validation. To construct dynamic validation processes, you can design custom validators and include them with the NG model in the command. The drawbacks of NG model. Performance overhead. Because the digest cycle is frequently triggered by changes in the view or model, two-way data binding may have an effect on performance in big systems with many bound items. So what happens, or let's say the drawback of NG model, is that if you create a whole structure of the application, or let's say the web application with a lot of bound items, it might make the process very complex. So if you want to make, let's say, a very simple web app, or let's say a web page, then I would suggest you use NG model. But if you keep on practicing, obviously you'll be able to create or interrelate it with other directives to make your, let's say, web app to be a lot more interactive and also professional at the same time. Complexity. NG model may make it more difficult to manage the logic form, or let's say logic and validation in complex forms with several nested items. Deprecated in Angular, such as post-AngularJS. The most recent version of Angular switched to more performance-friendly techniques like reactive forms, eschewing the heavy reliance on two-way data binding. Now let's check out the benefits of AngularJS forms. Two-way data binding. This eliminates the boilerplate code for managing input updates by automatically synchronizing forms with the specific model. Validation made easy. With integrated validators needed minimum length, or let's say min length, etc., or even max length, etc. And error handling, AngularJS simplifies validation. Error stakes. It makes the command simpler to control form behavior by providing states like $valid, $invalid, or $pristine, and also $dirty. Well, up till now, we only used scope, so these are also kind of like directives which you'll be able to use. Custom validation. With AngularJS, developers may create unique validation rules that work well with forms. modularity. By enabling modular form control using directives like ngModel and ngForm, repetition is decreased. Performance problems with AngularJS forms are a drawback. Now let's check out the points why those are a drawback. Performance bottlenecks may result from two-way data binding, particularly when handling a high volume of form inputs. Learning curve. The directive-based form structure and custom validation may be different for developers who are unfamiliar with AngularJS to grasp at first. Complexity in large forms. The digest cycle, error handling, and validation complexities of AngularJS can make managing the state of large forms challenging. Forms created with AngularJS are closely linked to the framework, which makes it challenging to reuse them in non-Angular settings or when moving to Angular, or let's say post-Angular JS. In conclusion, ngModel and AngularJS forms offer strong tools for creating dynamic, responsive forms that include error handling, validation, and real-time data binding. In larger systems, nevertheless, the employment, or let's say their employment, may result in complexity and also performance issues. So now you know the brief about the ngModel and AngularJS forms. So in this class, we're going to be using Atom because we do not need a live port, and make sure not to skip any part of these classes because each part is going to be very important. And as I'm going to be creating a large file, or let's say a large command string, then I would suggest you please make sure to keep your attention. And obviously you don't have to worry because I'm also going to be adding the file, or let's say the scripted file, inside of my resource folder, so you can check it out anytime you want. And obviously I would just suggest you try practicing on your own from scratch because it's going to help you a lot more to understand it better and also reuse it in later purpose. So without any further ado, let's open up Atom on our device. So as you can see from my screen, I have opened up Atom on my device. Now, the first thing that I want to do over here is I'm going to create a new file. Now, the name of the file which I want to keep it is going to be form.html. Okay, so here I'm going to start off putting in my HTML. There we go. So we have this over here. Now I'm going to start off customizing my HTML. Now, instead of these, what I want to do instead of dir directory, which we already have over here, I'm just going to define it as ng-app. Okay, so I have defined my ng-app and I'm going to call my app my app. Okay, so that is exactly what I want to put over here. Exactly that. Now, after that, what I want to do is I'm going to have this meta over here, even though this is like totally optional. Okay. Now, another meta that you can create is basically the viewport, but that is also totally optional. Inside the title, I'm going to name it AngularJS, and I'm going to call it form. Okay. So AngularJS form. Now, inside of this over here, or let's say right after the title, I'm going to put in my snippet. So open up the script tag. There we go. Script src is equal. And I can obviously put it like this, but obviously we don't want the same thing. Okay. So what I'm going to do over here is that I'm going to close this off and put in double quotation back again. Now, instead of this char set over here, I'm going to just cut this off. And now I'm going to open up any browser which I have, and I'm going to just copy the CDN. Now, if you don't want to go off to the browser, obviously I have other files where I have been using the CDN, so I can just copy this. Control C. Okay, so I can just paste it over here. And obviously, if you want to get the most updated one, just search for AngularJS or download AngularJS. AngularJS. Hit on enter. There we go. This is the exact site. Download AngularJS. And obviously you can just click on download if you want to. But obviously if you click on download JS, you'll be able to copy this from here. And obviously I have the same one working over here. So I'm going to close off the snippet. Now, after the snippet has been done, I'm going to create a specific style because I want my specific, let's say, data set, or let's say the data area or the data fields to say error if I don't have my specific files. But I'm going to create a couple of space just for now. Now, after this head over here, which you can see we have closed off the head, I want to start off my body tag. Now, inside the body tag, I'm going to create the ng controller. There we go. We have the ng controller. I'm going to close this filter off. So as we have the ng controller, I'm going to put in an equal. And after an equal, you want to define the controller. So here I'm going to put in fg, or let's say I'm just going to put in form controller. Okay. I'm going to keep it small letter. Okay. So we have the form controller over here. Now I'm going to start off with the h2 tag. h2 over here. And here I want to say this is the form. Okay. So this is the form, and I'm going to close off the /h2 tag. There we go. We have done that. And now you want to create the form. Now, when you are creating the form, obviously there is an individual command line saying, or let's say named form. So I'm going to type in form. So whenever you want to create a form, you have to type in the tag form. And then you're going to name that specific form. So the name of the form that I'm going to be using is going to be called user form. Okay. And after that, you want to create a submit button. So ng submit. Okay. So ng submit is going to be equal to, let's say, name the variable. So I'm going to put it submit form. And after that, open up the parentheses. In the parentheses, you want the user form over here. Okay. So it's going to validate it with the scope. So here you're going to type in $valid. So it's going to validate that specific variable. And after the parentheses ended, you want to like no validate, or you want to put in the command no validate. Okay. So you can see no validate attributes local form. And obviously you want to close off the tag. So basically when you close off the tag, we are good to go. Now here I'm going to be creating a couple of labels. Now this part is going to take a long time. So I would just suggest you make sure to give more attention to it. So start off with your own specific div tag. Now inside the div tag, I'm going to create my, let's say I'm just going to type in div. There we go. Now I'm not going to be defining my class, and I'm going to do everything inside of the div tag. Close the div tag, and there we go. Okay. So inside the div tag, I'm going to create a specific label. Label 4. So 4 is going to be equal to email. Okay. Email, close off the tag, and obviously you want a specific, let's say, text to appear up inside of your web. And then I'm going to close off the slash label. Okay. Slash label. And then you want to put in an input tag because you want to input the variable, also input the data. Another thing that you can do is that I'm going to show you how you can just create these structures. So I'm going to create another div tag, div. There we go. Inside the div tag, you're going to create another label. Label. Now label is going to be 4 equal to, let's say, email. Okay, we already had the email done. So we can obviously like change this. Okay, so I'm just gonna put in, let's say, name first. Also, I'm gonna put in username, or you can also put in name, whichever one you prefer. Okay, so I just put in name, and the next one that I'm using is for email. So here I'm going to put in email inside of the tag, and here I want to put in name. So I'm going to put in email. There we go. So after the email, I'm also going to close off the label. Okay, so we have the label over here. I'm going to create a bit of space. I'm going to copy this up and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so as we have name, email, and now the last thing that we want is going to be password. So obviously for that, we're going to be creating a label for password. Okay, so here type in password. Okay, so password is going to be equal to password. There we go. So we have the password over here. So what I want to do over here is that I'm going to save up this file. Save. Now you want to go off to, let's say, the Explorer. So I'm going to open up Explorer, open up the form, and you can see that this is how it will look like. Okay, but still you can see that this is not interactive. So obviously we want to create this web page to be a bit more interactive. So first off, what we want to do is that we want a script where we are going to be creating specific variables. And after I have created that, what I'm going to be doing is going to be, let's say, I'm going to be making each and every one of these tables to work as a specific data input, let's say array, or let's say an area. So let's go off to Atom again. So we have the div tag. Now, after the div tag has been done, now what I want to do is I'm going to create a button. So here I'm going to type in button over here. But before that, what you want to do is I'm going to copy up. Also, I'm just going to close this off. Control X. Okay. Here I'm going to create another div tag. Close this off. And inside the div tag, I'm going to put in the button. So the button is going to have a type. So the button type, what I'm going to say is going to have the command submit or admit, whichever one you prefer. So I'm going to put in submit in this case. And here you want to put in the ng disabled, because obviously we don't want our button to be enabled all of the time. So this ng disabled is going to have the invalid tag, or let's say the $invalid directive. So here ng disabled is going to be equal to user form dot $invalid. Okay, so $invalid. Now after that, you want to put in submit. Okay, now you want to close off the button tag. That's all you need to put over here. Okay, so as we have closed off our button, next thing that we want to do is we want to close off the div tag. There we go. We have created the div tag. Now, as we have created the div tag, we can obviously save up the file, go off to the browser, refresh it, and you can see now we have the submit button working properly. But you can see whenever I refresh it or whenever I click on this, it's refreshing on its own. So now we want to create more data over here because we are using two-way data binding. So that means I also want an array or an area where if I put any data in these values, it's going to appear over here. So to do that, first off, what I want to do is I'm going to go off to Atom. Now, another thing that I want to do over here, I'm going to close off this one so that it looks a bit more better, and it closes off this one. Refresh it. There we go. This is working a lot more better. Now, after the button has been created, now I'm going to be creating, let's say, the pre-tag, okay, where I'm going to be putting in my form data. So here I'm going to put in H3 or maybe H2, whichever one you prefer. So here I'm going to put in form. Okay, so form data colon, and I'm going to close off this tag slash h2. Okay, now after that, I want to put in the pre tag. So open the pre tag and you want to put in an expression here. I'm going to put in user and obviously put in this L over here or I over here, which is basically going to help you after a while. Well, if you still can't find that symbol, obviously you can copy it up from anywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to put in JSON just in case. For now, I'm just going to keep it like this, and later on, I'm going to paste it right over here. Now I'm going to I'm going to put in the slash pre, or I'm going to close off this pre tag. Now, after the pre tag has been created, I'm going to create my snippet for my variable for my Angular module. So I'm going to put in script. Okay, so the script is going to have the variables inside. So I'm going to put in var app equal to, let's say, Angular module. Okay, open up the parentheses and put in single quotation and make sure to check what name you are using as the ng app. So I'm going to put in my app. There we go. Now, after that, you want to create your own function. For that, put in a comma and secondary brackets open and close. And obviously, we are going to close this off with this symbol. Now, after that, you want to create the app controller. So I'm going to put app.controller. Okay, so app.controller, open up the parentheses, single quotation, form, and I'm going to put in controller. There we go. Form controller, put in a comma, I'm going to put in function. Okay, open up the parentheses and I'm going to put in $scope. Okay, so after $scope has been done, what I want to do is I'm going to close off one tag because we're not going to be needing both of them. Okay, but what you can also do is you can close off the tags like literally at the end. So you can open up the parentheses or the ending of the parentheses, hit on tab. Also, I'm going to hit on, let's say, just third brackets, and I'm going to create a space like this where I'm going to be defining everything. Okay, so inside of this, I'm going to put in the variables with the scope. Okay, scope.user. So scope.user is going to be equal to the variable or the value expression or whatever we put inside of our values. Okay, so put in a comma and I'm going to be creating more scopes. So I'm going to put in $scope. Okay, so this $scope is going to be my button. So I'm going to put in submit form. Okay, so $submit form is going to be equal to function. There we go, function, and I want to validate it. So for this instance, I want to use is valid. Okay, so as we have this is valid, what I want to do is I'm going to open up the third bracket again. There we go. We have another third bracket. Now, as we are using these buttons, so what we want to do is I want to start using my if command. If the button is valid, there we go. If it is valid, open up the third bracket again, close it off, and inside you want to put in the alert button. So alert, open up the parentheses, double quotation, put in form. Form submitted. Okay, form submitted successfully. That's what you need to put over here. Now, after the parentheses has been ended, you want to close it off with this. Now, as we have put in the if function, we also have to start off with the else function. So instead of this ending this over here, what I want to do is I'm going to put my code over here. Else, open up the expression, and here I want to put in another alert. Okay, open up the parentheses, and here put in double quotation. I'm going to put in, let's say, please input required data and try again, because this is going to be shown if it doesn't meet up the criteria to fill up the form. Okay. So after that, I'm going to put in a dot. Okay. And I'm going to close off this. So you'll see that we're going to have 1, 2, and 3. And after that, you want to put on this colon over here. And you also want to close it off from here. That's all. Now, after these have been done, you want to close off the script tag. /script. Okay. So that's all you need to do. But now only we have created the structure, but not the functions. So let's just save up this file first and check it out. Save, go off to the browser, refresh it, and there we go. We have the user data. So this is how it will look like. Okay. So if I submit the data, it's going to refresh, or let's say represent the data in this form data. Now I'm going to go off to my atom again, and the sign which I'm going to put over here is this one. Now if I just save up the file, go off to my browser, refresh it, you can see now this is empty because now it is not finding any data. But if I submit it, you can see that it is showing me form submitted successfully. Now, what I want to do is I want to customize each and every one of these forms because all of my stuff or all of my controller has been put in successfully. Now, the next thing that I want to start off with is the name. So after the label, I'm going to put in input. Okay, so input type. Input type is going to be equal, double quotation, text. Text, and I'm going to put in ID value. ID is equal, double quotation, name. Okay, so that is the name. And after that, I'm going to put in any specific name as, let's say, name. Okay, so I'm going to put in equal, and I'm going to put in double quotation and start off or put in the name again. Now you want to put in the ng model. So when I put in the ng model, it's going to derive the data from our variables. So ng model is going to be the user.name, which is going to be derived from the web, which is going to cause it to be two-way data binding. Double quotation, put in user.name. Okay, that is what you want to put. And obviously this is required, or this is the criteria. For this case, you have to put in the function required. Okay, required. And after you have put in required, just put in a space, slash, and close off the tag. That is how you want to put in the input data. Now you want to span in the values. So I'm going to put in span class is going to be equal to error if it doesn't meet up the criteria. So I'm going to put in error. Error ng show, it's going to be equal to, let's say, user form. There we go. We have the user form. Now, not only that, we also have to put in more. User form dot name, and then put in dot dirty. I'm also going to be explaining after this practical class ends, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, after you put in dirty, whenever you are using these directives or these commands, you have to put in 2%. There we go. 2%, and you're going to put in user. User form dot name. Dot name dot dollar invalid. Okay, so there we go. We have closed it off and we are done with this part. And now what I want to say, if it is an error, I wanted to say that name is needed. Okay, so if we just save up this file, and if I go off to my site, refresh it, you can see there we have this data. So I can put in more data, and you can see directly it is giving me the form, or let's say it is giving me the data inside the form. So that is basically how simple it is. But when it does not have a data, it's going to be saying that name is needed. So I'm going to be creating each and every one of these areas just the same way. So I'm going to go off over here, and I'm going to type in more commands for each and every one of them. So I'm going to just copy that for making it more easier, Control C. I'm going to paste it over here, and I'm going to do the same thing for password. So I'm going to start off with this email over here. So in this text, which we have over here, we have this as text. And we can also see that this one is for email. So instead of the text, what I want to put in is going to be the name. Okay? Or let's say the email directly. Email. Change this name into email, and also the name, which we already have over here as email. Okay? And we have the ng module where we're going to be using user.email. Okay? So after that, obviously put in the required slash and close off the tag. Now we're going to have the class error, ng show, and obviously instead of name, put in email, and obviously put in dirty to ampersand user form dot email again, and then put in invalid. Now, what I want to put over here is that I'm going to put in a text. I'm going to say verified account or verified email is needed. Okay, so there we go. Email is needed. And I'm going to do the same thing for my password. So that is also going to be very similar. So instead of text, I'm just going to change it to password. There we go. Instead of name, I'm going to put in password. Instead of name over here, password. Obviously, instead of user.name, I'm going to put in user password. Okay? So each and every one of them are going to be password. Now, I'm not going to be adding extra, but you can also add in an external or let's say optional stuff, which I'm going to be showing it to you in a bit. Okay? So we have this error, ng, and obviously in name, I'm going to put in password over here. Okay? So we have the password for each and every one of them. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. Password. Okay? So there we go. We have that as invalid. Now, one thing that we have to do is we have to close off the span tag, because if we don't close off the span tag, it's not going to work properly. So I'm going to open that up and I'm going to put in span. Okay. Close off the span tag on each and every one. Do the same thing over here, /span. Okay. So we have the span, and obviously we need a password. So for the password, I'm going to need a specific criteria for that. So here, I'm going to say password must be at least 8 characters long. That's it. Now I want to save up the file. Now if I save up the file, go off to my browser, refresh it, there we go. Now I can put in my data. Let's say I'm going to put in Sarah. Email is going to be this, and the password is going to be just any specific value. But if I put in something like this and hit on submit, you can see the form has been submitted successfully. So one thing that you can see from over here is that it doesn't need actually 8 characters long. But to make sure that it meets up the criteria, you have to use another function, or let's say another directive, which is called ng minimum length. So for that, go off to your IDE again and go off to the span in password. So after this invalid over here as user.password, which you can see as required, which is over here. Now before this required, I'm going to put in this value. Okay, just follow this up. I'm going to put in ng min length. Min length is going to be equal, and here I'm going to put in 8. So now if I save up the file, go up to my site, refresh it. Now if I just put in any specific value, and if I just put in this, you can see that the submit button does not open up. So it has to meet up its criteria. Okay, So it has to meet up its criteria. And then if I submit it, it's going to submit it successfully. So basically that is how you'll be able to create the structure. Okay. So we're almost done on these parts of how you'll be able to create a form. Now, another external thing that you can do is create the meta name. Now, even if you don't want to do it, it's also totally fine, but you can initialize it like the width, the device, and also the initial scale if you want to. That's like totally up to you. Now, another thing that I'm going to do is that I want an error button, which is going to show me an error if it doesn't meet up the criteria. So what I'm going to do is right after the snippet of this one, you can see over here, as we have the script. Okay. So what I want to do is that I'm going to close off the script over here because we don't need two of these scripts working. Save up the file, go off to the site, refresh it, and there we go. You have to put in your own data. Now, after the script, which is starting from here, what I want to do is I'm going to create a style tag. So I'm going to put in style. Okay. Close off this. And inside the style, I'm going to put in dot error 404. Okay. So instead of that, you can also put it just like this. And now you have to express it. So I'm going to put in a color. And now the color, as we are using CSS, I can just name it red. Okay. Close this off. And obviously you want to close off the tag. And after the tag has been closed, you want to put in our close off the style tag / style. Okay. Now, if I just save up the file, go off to my site, refresh it. Now, if I put in this, if I put in this, and even if I put in a couple of values, it's not going to work. So like this, I have to put in specific variables. And even if I submit it, it's not going to work. Okay. So it will show me an error if it doesn't meet up the criteria. So let's just go up to my command lines again, and then you have to define a bit more. So the change that I want to show you over here is that you can also like just cut this and you can put in the span over here so that it is a bit more easier. It's going to contain all of this data and it's also going to show you the error. Okay. Now, if I just save up the file, go off to my site, refresh it, and you can see it's not showing me anything. So if I put in this, you can see this is how it looks like. You can see now it is in red. Okay. You also have to put in any specific variables and you just have to put in its criteria and then it will be removed. So now you can see the CSS or the style file or the style command is also working. Now, one thing that you can also try doing is go off to your Atom again. And what you want to do is you can close these off. Let's just keep it just like this. I'm just going to keep it all the way just like this. And just try to check out your expressions. If the expressions are not working properly, it's not going to work that well. So just make sure to check it out properly. And another thing that you want to do is just close off the browser again, save this file up, and try opening this from the Explorer again. So if I open this up, you will see that this is how it will look like. Okay, so if I put in Sarah, there we go. You can see 8 characters long. So if I just put in a couple of these variables, submit, you can see form has been submitted successfully and is also given out the data just how I want it to be. Okay. So thank you for watching this video up till the very end and hope you understood about everything in this class. If you still have any confusion or any question about any part of this lesson, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of, let's say, AngularJS. But another thing that I want to just, give you out a better idea about is the $dirty. So basically it is kind of like also a controller like scope. Okay. It is a control and considered dirty if the user has changed the value. So this is mostly used when there is two-way data binding, and it becomes true once the user interacts with the control, such as a touch. Okay, a control is touched if the user has focused on the control and then moved away, or even put any specific data inside of the interactive web application or the web page. So thank you for watching this video, and let's move on to our next class of AngularJS. Welcome to a new class of AngularJS. Well, in this class, I'm going to be covering everything that you need to know about AngularJS dependency. Well, when we talk about dependency, well, we can go back to our first or our second class where we have used a couple of simple commands to represent our data inside of our web. So in this class, I'm going to be using dependency with specific APIs. And also I'm going to be using that specific API to cover up, or let's say, fill up the data area of where we want that to be. Now, it might seem like it's very simple or it's going to be something similar to my previous classes, but it's not going to be the same, okay? Because we're going to be filling in data areas where we need it to filled by with specific APIs. Before getting into more of our practical classes, let's just learn more about the brief of dependency in AngularJS. The external service are modules that your application need in order to operate properly are referred to as dependencies in AngularJS. A robust built-in dependency injection or DI system in AngularJS controls the instantization and sharing of components, services, and other objects inside an application. Purposes of AngularJS dependencies are given below. Separation of concerns. AngularJS encourages modular development in which each component of the application is concentrated on a single task. By introducing dependencies, services, or modules into various application sections. Reusability. Reusing dependencies such as services across several controllers or components simplifies and reduces redundancy in the application code. Manageability. Without having to create instances by hand, dependency injection DI enables you to administer and inject services like $HTTP, scope, or custom services wherever it is necessary. Testability. Increasing the application's testability is one of the main goals of AngularJS dependencies. During testing, you can isolate various components for unit testing by injecting mock dependencies. How AngularJS dependency injection works. Other modules or services can be listed as dependencies when defining a module in AngularJS. When necessary, AngularJS injects these dependencies into controllers, directives, and services after automatically resolving them at runtime. Now, I have also applied a specific command line which you are going to apply inside of your command lines. So make sure to follow up and not skip any part in this class. Advantages of using AngularJS dependencies. Architecture in modules. Dependencies make it easier to manage, comprehend, and test an application by dividing it into smaller, more focused parts or services. Reusability of code. It is possible to reuse services and modules in many application components or applications. This improves maintainability and lessens code application. Unreliable coupling. Due to the ability to dynamically inject services or objects, components are less reliant on one another, enabling distinct code segments to develop independently. Testability. During unit testing, Dependency injection facilitates the substitution of mock objects for actual dependencies. This makes it easier to test and isolate each application components without worrying about how other components would affect it. Reliability. Because dependencies can be centrally controlled and injected as necessary, minimizing tight coupling between components, the application is simpler to maintain and also update. Now let's check out the disadvantages of AngularJS dependencies. Complicated setup. It might be difficult to set up dependency injection and manage a lot of dependencies, particularly in large application with several services and modules. Learning curve steeper. Dependency injection and its setup may be a little confusing to those who are unfamiliar with AngularJS. It necessitates knowing how factories, providers, and services operate. Unnoticed dependencies. The flow of dependencies in large application may be obscured by AngularJS's automatic dependency resolution, making it more difficult to identify which services or modules are injected where. Above. Performance problems might result from improper dependency management or excessive service usage, particularly if services are being loaded needlessly and are not being effectively controlled. So I'm going to be making sure that this class is going to be very simple and how you'll be able to use the most simple way of using dependencies in AngularJS. In summary, modularity, code reuse, and testability are encouraged by AngularJS dependencies, which are controlled using dependency injection, although the system is strong and adaptable. As the application grows, it may become more complicated. It facilitates easier maintenance and lessens tight coupling between components, but it can also cause configuration and debugging issues, especially in large projects. So I would suggest you, if you're quite new or let's say intermediate to the skills of AngularJS, try to keep it very simple and small as possible. So let's get into more of our practical part of knowing and also writing dependencies and how to make it functional inside of your web. So let's open up Atom, or let's say any IDE which you have on your device. As you can see from my screen, I have opened up Atom right now. So first thing that we need to do over here is I'm going to create a new file. So the name of the new file that I'm going to be using is going to be dep.html. Hit on enter and there we go. Now I'm going to type in HTML. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this doc type over here. So after I'm done, I'm going to be defining my ng app. Ng equal to my application. Okay, so that is the exact name that I want to be using. Now I'm going to define the title. So I'm going to put in AngularJS dependency. Okay, so there we go. We have the AngularJS dependency. Now let's just open up one of these files and I'm going to copy this snippet. Control C, there we go. I'm just going to go off the DEP over here and I'm going to create that snippet. So after I have created the snippet, close off the head tag. Now let's go off into the body. So I'm going to define my controller. Okay, so the controller is going to be called main controller. Okay, main controller. Okay, so that is what you want to put in. Now the next thing that I want to do is I need a header. So I'm going to put in H2 or H1, whichever one you prefer. So I'm going to name it AngularJS dependency example. Okay, that's what you want to put over here and close off the tag. That's all. Now the next thing that you want to do over here is open up the div tag. So in this div tag, we're going to be defining each and every one of these classes. So in the div tag, I'm going to put in, let's say, h2. In the h2, I'm going to say this is going to be a random user data. Okay, close off the tag. That's all. Now, the next thing that you want to do is I'm going to put in a paragraph tag. Inside the paragraph tag, I want to make sure that my first data that I want it to be visible all the time, even without the API, is in kind of bold. So for bold in AngularJS, you just have to use strong. Okay. So inside the strong, I'm going to put in name. Okay. Name, close off strong. That's it. Now inside the strong, or let's say after the strong, you want to put in an expression. So open up this expression over here. I'm going to say user data dot name dot first. Okay. Put in a space and put in another expression. I'm going to put in user data dot name dot last. That is going to be the first name and the last name. Okay. So we have the first name and the last name expression applied. Now I'm going to close off my paragraph tag. There we go. And the next one, I'm going to create another paragraph tag. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to put in strong, close off the tag, and this data I want is email. So email, close off the strong tag. There we go. And obviously put in your expression. User data dot email. That's all you need to put. Okay. And close off the paragraph tag. Now open the paragraph tag again. P. Open this up. Strong. And then here, the last thing that I want is going to be region. Okay. Or region or the location, whichever one you prefer. I can also put in location over here. So instead of that, even if it's like something that you want it to be visible on your web, you can just put in whatever you prefer. Okay. So there we go. We have the specific region, strong. There we go. Open up the expression. I'm going to say user data dot location dot city. That's what you want to put, and put in a bit of space. Now put in a comma, and after that, open up the expression again. Inside, I'm going to put in user data dot location dot country. Okay, that's all you need to put. Now I'm going to close off my paragraph tag over here too. Now after that, you want to close off the div tag right over here. That's all you need to do over here. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to create, let's say, a service, or let's say a service value. For that, I'm going to create another div tag over here. Div, I'm going to put in h2 over here, and I'm going to call it, or let's say, this is the text from custom service. Okay. Now I'm going to close off this one too, or close off the h2 tag right over here. Okay. Now I'm going to create a paragraph tag for defining my expression as the message. So here I'm going to put in custom message. Okay. I'm going to close off my paragraph tag over here. That's all. And then you want to close off the div tag. Now, after you have created both of these div tags, the next thing that you want to do is you want to create a variable. So here, just type in var app is going to be equal. Define your Angular dot module. There we go. Angular module. Open up the parentheses, single quotation, my application. Okay. Now, after the my app, obviously you want to create your own function. So secondary bracket right over here and close it off. Now for that one, I'm going to create an app service, app.service. We can also create a bit of space over here so it just looks a bit better. So I'm going to put in the app.service, open up the parentheses, single quotation, type in custom service. Okay, custom service. After that, put in a comma, type in function. Okay, open up the parentheses again, and obviously you want to, let's say, open up the third bracket. So after that, open up the third bracket over here. Now, after you open up the third bracket, you have to put in the get message value. So I'm going to put in this, okay? This get message. So this get message is going to be equal to the value of the function, which we are going to be calling anytime we need. After that, put in a space, open up the expression again, and you want a return value as each and every one of those, like data or user data or just value of data. Return, here I want to say hello. That's all you need to put. I'm just going to put in this exclamation mark just in case. After that, you want to also close it off. That's all you need to do. Now I'm going to close off each and every one of them. There we go. So we are done on this part. Now you are going to be creating your own app controller again, or you're going to be calling that back up again. Okay, so for that, I'm going to create a bit more space again. And here you want to start off the app.controller. Okay, so app.controller, open up the parentheses, single quotation, and type in the main controller. Okay, so as we have the main controller, define your function back again. So type in function. After function, open up the parentheses, and inside of the parentheses, you are going to define the scope. After the scope, put in comma, and as we're going to be using API, one of the most important thing that you have to put over here is $HTTP. Okay, and then put in a comma, and then we need custom service. Okay, so as we have custom service right after this first parentheses closed, now you have to define your third bracket. Okay, so after defining your third bracket, put in a bit of space just like this. Now you're going to be defining your HTTP get first. So $HTTP. After that, open up, let's say, your parentheses, or after HTTP, first type in .get. Here, I'm just going to close it off with the get. Open up the parentheses and put in single quotation right now. Now you don't have to put anything right now because I'm going to be getting the API later on. After that, hit on enter and then put in or start in your then function. Obviously, make sure that this is inside a bit. Then over here, open up the parentheses and type in function. So after typing in function, open up the parentheses and you want a specific response. Now after that, open up the expression again and you have to define your scope. So $scope, okay? $scope dot user data and then equal to the response you're going to be getting. So type in response dot data, and after that result. After result, open up the second brackets and put in 0. Now I'm going to close it off, okay? So we are done on this part. Now I'm going to make sure that this part closes off over here with a single third bracket close, okay? So this response tag, which we see over here, should be this one. Okay, so make sure that this one ends over there. And even if you don't find this over there, just make sure to create the space and close it off. That's basically all you need to do. Another thing that you want to check over here most of the time is that if this one has closed. So if this one has closed, make sure to just, select it up and it will find out the one where it is selected. Okay. So make sure to check that one properly. After that, what you want to do is that you want to close off more. Okay. So we are going to be needing 2 of these over here. After that, what you want to do is that you just have to type in the function, comma, and then type in your function. After typing in your function, open up the parentheses again and type in error value. After the error value, open up the let's say the expression or the third bracket again. And in this third bracket, what you want to do is that you have to define the console. Console.log. And after that, open up the parentheses again, double quotation, error, fetching data. Okay. After that, put in this and put in a comma and then define your error. That's all. Now you have to end this off at the same time too. Now, if there's like a lot of these, you can just cut a couple of parts of these because we're not going to be needing all of these over here. Okay. So we're going to be ending this part here. Now, after that, what you want to do is you want to define the scope. So I'm going to type in $scope.custom message. Okay. Custom message is going to be equal to custom service dot get message. Open up the parentheses and close it off. After that, what you want to do is you want to close this one off too. And obviously you just have to close off the snippet /script. There we go. We have the /script over here because we have started off the script over there. Now, if you still can't find the script, what you basically have to do, you have to check it before the var. So here I'm going to just type in the script. That's all. And there we go. We have the script ready. Now, if you basically just save up the file, save this file, go off to the browser, or let's say I'm just going to go off over here first. I'm going to refresh it. There we go. Now we'll find out the DEP or the dependency. Now you can see we have all of these datas over here. And we can also see the custom message. But one thing you can check over here is that obviously we don't have the data applied. Now for that, what you want to do is open up a new tab. And what you basically have to do is you have to search for, let's say, random user API. Hit on enter, go off the random user generator and copy this. Control C, and then go off to your IDE. And after you go off to your IDE, you have to put in that specifical value. Okay, so in this HTTP GET, just paste it. And another thing what you want to type in is API. And put in another slash. That's all. Now save up the file and go off to the browser. So whenever we open the site, we just have to go off to this browser or this site again, refresh it, and there we go. We have the data. Now, even if we go off to our IDE, and let's just, in this case, let me just remove this for now. Control X. And if I just go off to the site, first off, save this up, go off to the site, refresh it. Now you can see there is no data. Okay, we only have hello. But if we paste it back there again, I'm just going to press Control Z, save up the file, go off to the site, refresh it. Now we have this data. Now we can also refresh it multiple times. It's just going to change over and over again. Okay. There we go. So this is how it is going to work. So thank you for watching this video up till the very end and hope you understood about everything in this class. If you still have any confusion or any question about any part of these classes, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of Angular JS. Welcome to class project 1. The name of the class project is Interpolation in Angular JS. Now I have attached in a description and also an outcome, and I also have the step-by-step method of what you will do in this class project. So let's get into our description. In Angular JS, interpolation refers to the embedding of expressions within the view using double curly braces. These expressions are dynamically evaluated and bound to the scope of the Angular JS application, allowing the view to update when the model changes. So let's get into our steps. First off, create an HTML file where you will be defining the Angular JS app and use interpolation. Step 2. Add a controller to manage the data and want to display. You will use the ngController directive to associate your view with the controller. Step 3. Ensure the Angular JS library is linked correctly in your HTML file. Step 4. Add interpolation in the HTML using the curly braces or the third bracket to display data dynamically. In step 5, open the HTML file in your browser to see the result. Now, what is the outcome? Knowing how to use interpolation in Angular JS is essential for dynamically binding data between your application's logic, such as your controller or your module, and the view, which is HTML. This data binding creates a more interactive, responsive, and efficient user interface. So let's get into our class project by starting off with the first step. And the last thing that you want to do after watching this whole video is try to apply it on your own, and obviously make sure to upload that HTML file into our resource panel so that we can check on how you are progressing with work, and you can also give us a screenshot of it. So let's open up Atom. As you can see on my screen, I have opened up Atom. Now, as I have opened up Atom, the first thing that I want to do over here is going to be the interpolation. Now, interpolation is going to be very simple when you are trying to, let's say, get more into the most easiest and the basic parts of Angular JS. Okay, so first thing that you want to do is that I have this test folder over here. Now, here I'm going to name a file saying classproj1.html. That is going to be the first file. Now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the HTML tag. Now, after I have this HTML tag opened up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this off. Okay, and after this HTML, I just want to define my ng app. So here, you're going to define your ng app, and you're going to put in an equal, double quotation, and define your own app. So in this case, I'm going to be using the name my app. Now in the head or after the meta, you can also remove the meta if you want to. So inside of the title, I'm going to name it Angular JS Interpolation. Okay, that is all. And after the title, you obviously want to put in the snippet. So I'm going to put in the script. Now, after the script, put in src is going to be equal. Now I'm just going to go off to any of these ones, which I already have. And I'm just going to use this specific source. Now I can also copy this whole thing, Control C, and I'm just going to go off to my class project 1. And instead of this, I'm just going to paste this out. Okay. So there we go. We have the snippets. And if you want to keep this another script or another snippet, you can keep it. But if you don't want to, you can also remove it anytime you want. Now, after we are done, now we're going to be defining the body. Now, when you're defining the body, you have to use the div tag. So div, now you're going to put in the ngController. There we go. ngController equal to myCTRL. That's all that you're going to put. Close off the tag. Now here inside of this, put in the paragraph tag to define whatever data you want. So I'm going to put in hello, comma, and now you're going to define the expression inside of it. So I'm just going to put in 2 spaces or 3 spaces just in case. Put another space, and I'm going to use another value right over here. Now, instead of that, or let's say I'm just going to put in ID, and here, LID. Okay, so first ID and last ID. That's what I want it to be put. Okay, so as I have this value, I'm going to just put in an exclamation mark. And obviously, I'm going to close off the paragraph tag. Now, to the same thing, I'm going to create another paragraph tag, close this off, and I'm going to say, this is the year. And obviously, I'm just going to put in this parentheses, or let's say this expression again. And obviously, I'm just going to put in this year. Okay, so this year is going to be that value. Put in a full stop, close off the paragraph tag, and obviously do another one, the paragraph tag, and here I'm going to do a mathematical value. So math is going to be like this, and I'm going to add 4 plus 8. That's what I'm going to do. Now 4 plus 8 space equal to curly braces again, and here you want to define that again. 4 plus 8. Okay, so that is what you're gonna put. Open up the tag and then close off the tag just like this. It's just basically very simple. Now after that, obviously you want to close off the div tag slash div. That's what you want to put. Now obviously you have to create another snippet inside to define your variable of the application or your Angular module. So open up the snippet again, script, close it off, and now define the variable. So var app is going to be equal to Angular dot module. There we go. Open up the parentheses and define your application, which is my app. Okay, and after that, put in a comma, put in the secondary brackets. That's all you're gonna do. And after that, we're going to close it off. And after that, you're gonna put in the app.controller. Okay, app.controller, open up the parentheses, single quotation, and then put in my CTRL. That is what I am using right now. Put in a comma, and then I'm going to put in the function. Okay, open up the parentheses again, and then define your scope. Okay, so you've defined your scope. Now I'm going to put in a space, third bracket, and create another variable. Now this time I'm going to define each and every one of these variables that I have been using right over here. So I'm just going to go over here, $scope, $scope.id. Okay, so $scope.id is equal to, let's say, Sarah. I'm going to close this off. $scope.lid is going to be equal, double quotation, and here I'm going to say answer. Okay, I'm going to close this off to $scope dot, and then I'm going to put in this year. Okay, so this year is going to be equal to new date, open up the parentheses, and then put in a dot. New date dot this. And then you're going to put in get full year. Now, if you want to use a specific function, then you have to change this into current year. So that is also doable. So if I put in current year, just like this, and if I change this value over here too, I'm just going to cut this off. It will just, AngularJS will basically analyze it more easier way. Okay, so I'm going to put in current year, and then we have this new date, And then we have this get full year. Okay. Open up the parentheses and close it off. That's all you need to do basically. Now go off to the last line, which you can see over here. And you also want to close that off and obviously close off the snippet / script. That's all. Okay. So when you close this off, you can basically see that it is now, identifying whatever functions we are going to be using. So basically that's all. Now, if you just basically save up this file, and if you go off to the Explorer, now let's just go off the Explorer. There we go. And if I just open this up, there we go. You can see this is the year 2024. Hello, Sarah Hancher, and 4 + 8 is 12. Now, to check if the functions are working properly, I'm going to change a couple of data right over here. Let's say Tim. And here I'm going to put in 10. And obviously I'm just going to put 10 over here too. Another thing that I want to do is that I'm going to change up. Let's say I will not be able to change my year, but I will be able to change out the data values. So if I just save up the file, and if I directly go off to my browser, refresh it, you can see now we have Tim Hancher. We also have the math. 4 + 10 is equal to 14. So what you want to do on the last step is just save up this file, which you have over here, and then just, upload it onto our project panel so that we can check on how you are progressing with work. And even after it, if you still have any confusion or any question or facing any problems, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out. So let's move on to class project 2 of AngularJS. Welcome to class project 2. Well, in this class project, or the name of the class project 2 is style binding in AngularJS. Just like my previous class project or class project 1, I have added in a description, also an outcome, and step-by-step method of what you should follow up to learn style binding in AngularJS. So let's get into our description. In AngularJS, style binding allows you to dynamically set or update inline styles on HTML elements based on data in the scope. This is useful when you want to change the appearance of elements conditionally based on application state or user interaction without manually manipulating the DOM. So let's get into the steps. Create an HTML file for your AngularJS application where you will implement dynamic style binding. Step 2. Define an AngularJS controller to manage your dynamic styles using ngController. Step 3. Add ngStyle directive to an element like paragraph tag, where you want to apply dynamic styles. Step 4. Create a button that triggers the function to change the style when clicked. In step 5, open the HTML file in the browser to see the result. Initially, the text will be styled with the default style, color blue, font size 20px, background color light gray. When you click the Change Style button, the styles will dynamically change to color red, font size 30 pixels, and background color yellow. Now, if you want to use any different ones, you can also do that. Now let's get into the outcome. Using style binding in AngularJS is to dynamically apply and control CSS styles on HTML elements based on the application's data model or user interaction. Instead of manually manipulating the DOM to change styles, style binding allows you to declaratively bind styles to specific conditions, improving code efficiency, responsiveness, and maintainability. So, now that we know about the outcome and the descriptions, let's get into the steps and start off using our first step of how we'll be able to use style binding in AngularJS. So you can see that I have opened up Atom. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to create a file over here. So I'm going to name it CLASSPRJ2. .html. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So let's start off with the HTML. HTML. That's what you're going to put. Now, after that, let's just remove one of these from here. And I'm going to define my ng app again. Okay, ng app is equal, double quotation, my app. Okay, so that's what you want to put. Now you can remove the meta if you want to, but inside I'm just going to put in my style. So I'm going to put in style binding. Okay, so after style binding, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create or copy the snippet. So I'm just going to copy the snippet and I'm going to paste it right over here. Okay, so after I have the snippet, I'm just going to close this off and I'm going to start on defining my body tag. So inside the body, I'm just going to put in my div tag. Div ng controller. Okay, ng controller is going to be called my CTRL. That's all. Now after that, open up the paragraph tag and you're going to define your ng style. Okay, so ng style is going to be equal, double quotation, and obviously put in my style. Okay, that is going to be the name. There we go, we have my style. Close off the tag right over here and then define your text. I'm going to say this is the text. That's all. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close off this paragraph tag /p. Okay, so as we are done with this paragraph tag, now I'm going to create an interactive button. So I'm going to put in the button tag. And after the button tag, you're going to define your ng click. Okay, ng click is going to be equal, double quotation, I'm going to say change style. Okay, after change style, open up the parentheses and keep it blank because you are going to be defining that inside of my variable. So after that, close off the tag and define your button. So here, I'm going to say toggle style. Okay, so after toggle style, I'm going to close off my button tag. There we go. So we are almost done with this div tag. So I'm going to put in /div, close off the tag. Okay, so after that, you are going to be defining your script because we are not yet done defining our body. So here, click, or let's say I'm going to create another snippet. So create script. And over here, you're going to say var app is going to be equal to Angular module. Angular dot module, then open up the parentheses and define my app. And after that, put in a comma. And after that, secondary brackets, and obviously close that off. There you go. Now, after that, you're going to be defining your app.controller. App.controller, open up parentheses, single quotation, and put in my CTRL. And after that, define your function. So we have defined my function, but obviously we're going to need a scope. So type in scope. And obviously after that, between it, just open up the expression and create your own scopes. So inside my scope, first off, I'm going to create the variable. For that, type in $scope. $scope is .my style. We're going to be intertwining both of them right now. Now expression open up, and then now you're going to be putting your CSS codes. So let's start off with the color. So I'm going to start off with the color of the text. So color is going to be equal to, let's say I'm just going to say blue, just in this case. So we have the blue text. Now open up single quotation again, and I'm going to change my font size. Put in a dash. There we go. And after that, open up the single quotation again and type in your value. So I'm going to put in 21px. Okay. Put in a comma. And the next one that I'm going to put single quotation again, I'm going to put in background. There we go. Background. And then put in color. Background color, which we're going to be using, is going to be called, let's say I'm just going to use gray or light gray, whichever one you prefer. Okay. So basically we are done with all of the styling. Now, after the first one, you can see over here, I'm just going to close this off. Now we are still not done because now we are going to be defining my change style. So for that, I'm going to create a bit more space again. $scope. After $scope, I'm going to put in dot. I'm going to put in change style. Change style is going to be equal to function. Open up the parentheses, and right after the parentheses, open up your expression. Now, after the expression, you are going to be defining your scope again. So I'm going to put in scope dot my style. Okay. So my style is going to be like this. Equal. There you go. You're going to put in an equal, and then you're going to define your own expression again. Inside of that expression, define the color. So I'm just going to copy all of these just in this case. Control C, paste it. But obviously we don't want the same thing. So instead of blue, let me say I want red. Instead of 21px, I want 31px. Instead of gray, maybe I want green or yellow, whichever one you prefer. Okay? So make sure to keep that thing in mind. So here I'm just going to put in green. Okay? And after all of these are done, make sure to close each and every one of them off. There we go. And obviously, close off the snippet. That's one of the most important thing. Script. Now, after you're going to put in your script, all of these are going to be validated. So now what you want to do is save up the file. Now you're just going to go off to Explorer, just go off the test over here, and I'm going to open up class project 2. There we go. We have the text in blue and also in gray. Now, if I click on this toggle style, it will change the color into red and green. Now, if I want to check out if the functions are working properly, what I can do over here is that as we have this blue, I want something, let's say not cyan, but yellow. As we have red over here, obviously I don't want it to be like that. Instead, I want light gray. Now, if I just save up the file, go off to my browser, refresh it, this is how it's going to look like, and this is how it's going to look like. Okay? So the last step that you want to do is save up this file and just upload this file into our project panel so that we can check on how you are progressing with work. So thank you for watching these videos and this course up till the very end, and hope you understood about everything in this course. If you still have any confusion or any question about any part of these lessons or even class projects, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to guide you through the whole process and help you in any problems. So stay well and hope to see you guys in my next course.